Hey, every Friday. This week AMD's comeback seems like it has fizzled out, Google embraces Passkeys, and Mozilla launches their own social media app. Kind of. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. This video is sponsored by Brilliant. Okay, this week we start the brief with Motorola launching the Edge 40 Pro for the US market under the name Motorola Edge Plus, a real flagship at $800 although it will strangely not be sold by any of the three big carriers. Also, Motorola announced the non-Pro Edge 40 in the UK and Europe, with a few Pro features missing and a weaker MediaTek Dimensity 8020 processor, and in exchange it is a full €300 cheaper. Next, Apple and Google are working together on an effort to combat unwanted location tracking by Bluetooth devices, leading towards an industry standard, and we'll learn the details of that next week at Google's I/O. And on that note, more and more details of the Pixel Fold are out, and while leaks painted a pretty picture, the Made by Google account showed off plenty via Twitter and the Google Store, including a nearly gapless hinge and very striking big bezels. I do wonder why those are as big as they are. Oh, and also the Pixel 7a phones are already on eBay, which is, I guess, just a classic Google tradition by now. And then next, over at Intel, the company confirmed leaks saying that it will now drop the i branding from the likes of the Core i5 and i7 chips and will replace them with an Ultra in some cases, like the Intel Core Ultra 5 1003H. That's a mouthful. It definitely feels like tech companies are using the word ultra just a little bit too generously these days. Anyway, talking of ultra, Apple's new ultra high yield savings account reportedly drew nearly $1 billion in deposits in just 4 days and $400 million on day one for that sweet 4.15% interest rate. So that's lots of money flowing into the banks of Apple/Goldman Sachs. Next, this week we saw some brutal job cuts, with Qualcomm cutting 5% of its people, but somewhat alarmingly up to 20% of its Qualcomm mobile division workforce. Shopify cut 20% of its employees, and IBM's CEO wildly said that the company could probably replace about 8,000 jobs with AI over the next 5 years. You can just see the CEOs of this world licking their lips in anticipation. Talking of AI, the Writers Guild of America is on strike in large part against the use of AI in Hollywood and beyond. Apparently, studios are starting to use ChatGPT to generate drafts, and then they just want to have human writers polish those up, which would of course mean way lower pay. And on the podcast this week, Tristan and I played a fun game of rating Google I/O announcements before they were even announced, plus a bunch of other topics and a mailbag. And you can find links to that down in the description. Okay, and for my first story of the week, AMD's big comeback seems to have hit a wall, with their Ryzen division apparently doing particularly badly. So the company announced their quarterly earnings recently, and while they managed to make a loss of $139 million following a big decline, this poor performance is somehow still better than expected. And looking at their segments, the one that stands out is what they call client. That covers all the Ryzen chips that you know about that go into desktops and laptops and so on, and AMD managed a staggering 65% drop in sales from over $2 billion to just $739 million, with the division managing to turn from profit-making to loss-making over the year as well. Everyone is struggling with PCs right now, but AMD managed to perform even poorer than this already poorly performing industry. According to Passmark, we can see that AMD is doing kind of okay on desktops, despite some literal burnout issues with some Ryzen 7000 chips lately, but Intel has a very clear stranglehold on x86 laptops, which sell in much higher numbers, and despite recent gains, AMD has not been able to show any major victories in the server space either. Big Red claimed that their upcoming Ryzen Mobile 7040U series CPU was supposedly going to offer better performance than Apple's M2 chips, but without any proof and with multiple delays, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. After acquiring the company Xilinx, the former CEO of that firm was put in charge of all of AMD's AI efforts, so maybe that will yield some results in the future. But what might really help AMD through this tough times is news that AMD and Microsoft are apparently teaming up to work on dedicated AI chips. Microsoft is apparently providing a lot of cash to get a kind of homegrown Microsoft processor for AI workloads codenamed Athena. Let's see how that works. And just for context, Intel also had a terrible quarter. They managed to lose $2.8 billion, but at least I guess that company has the excuse of building up a lot of fabs, which AMD doesn't. So there's that. Okay, for my second story of the week, Google announced the beginning of the end for passwords just ahead of World Password Day by saying that Google accounts will now support passkeys. And Google is saying that these passkeys will eventually completely replace passwords, which Apple and Microsoft also seems to agree with, so it's probably a good time to talk about what the current state of passkeys are. So a passkey is like a complex machine-generated password that gets created automatically when you sign up for an account. Your device stores your private key, ideally in an encrypted chip called the TPM on the device itself, which you can access with, for example, your biometrics, while the public key gets stored on the server of the service that you're actually creating an account with, and the two combined can authenticate you. This means that the whole authentication process becomes automatic, secure, and resistant to phishing. While you as a human might fall for a website that kind of looks like your bank's account, your phone won't, because it will recognize that the public key is off and therefore won't authenticate you. It's kind of like a hardware security key, like a YubiKey, except now your phone or computer can become that key. Apple and Microsoft have both already started using this to some degree, and now with Google, the big three are all on board. Password managers like my sponsor NordPass are starting to support it too, and Google lists services like DocuSign, Kayak, PayPal, Shopify, and Yahoo Japan, who have all started accepting passkeys. I guess it will take decades for the whole industry to switch to passkeys, and I bet that many users will resist for many decades as well, but the whole industry seems to be on board with this, and I'm kind of on board as well. Obviously, not letting people use, ABCD123 as their passwords is a good thing, and so is avoiding phishing attacks, but I do wonder what will happen if all your devices that store your passkeys are gone, say in a house fire or in a robbery or something. Apple says that they have manual recovery options that involve you getting an SMS and talking to a customer support agent, for example, which opens up a whole other can of worms, but I guess that is something. For now, I think personally I'll just go for having multiple YubiKeys for important accounts that I own and then sharing them in a distributed way so they don't all get lost at the same time, but I am excited for a passwordless future. Okay, and for my third story of the week, Mozilla is attempting a new approach to social media by making their version only for good people. They created Mozilla.social as the organization's new Mastodon instance, and before you fall asleep, there's more to the story than just this. So Mozilla.social is just a regular old Mastodon server where you can generate an account and do social things, with the one exception that Mozilla is going to be way stricter with moderation. There's no impersonation, no misinformation, no derogatory language about gender, orientation, race, and so on. In other words, it's a mandatory nice place. Except, of course, you can still follow any Mastodon user from any other server who can be just as rude to you as you want them to be. Anyway, what's actually interesting is that Mozilla said that they want to go much further than this. You see, Mastodon is built on an open protocol called ActivityPub that covers all the basic functionality of being able to comment or post images and like things and whatnot, but beyond that, anyone can create a social media app on top of that as they wish, and apparently that is what Mozilla is planning to do. And similarly, Tumblr, Flickr, Pinterest, and many others have all announced experimenting with their own ActivityPub instance as well, so basically we could see a bunch of these smaller companies building their own little social media platforms. And because they all use the same protocol, you could join one and still see what happens on the others, kind of like how you can join Gmail and still talk to somebody who's on Outlook or on Yahoo. Of course, all the companies that I've mentioned have been, well, just moderately successful lately, to say the least, so who knows if it will go anywhere, but it is an experiment that we can all watch together. Now, Mastodon and all of these federated services still seem way too complicated and technical for the average user to figure out, but if you want to feel confident in tackling complex technical systems, then look no further than Brilliant. Brilliant is the best online platform for learning STEM topics, and they specifically focus on creating great learning paths from beginner to advanced levels that are all accompanied by interactive exercises at each step. From maths to physics to my personal favorite, which is computer science, they help you build a real, deep understanding that actually sticks with you because of all the exercises that you have to do after every class. Whether you want to level up at your job or move forward in school or just exercise your brain for the fun of it, you'll find the right classes over there, and teachers include people from Microsoft, Google, and MIT, and lately even popular science YouTubers like Kurzgesagt, Real Engineering, and Sabine Hossenfelder, who really know how to teach. You can get a 30-day free trial at brilliant.org/TFC, and the first 200 people who sign up using that link will also get 20% off their annual premium subscription, so check it out. Happy learning, and I'll see you in the next one.